This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
We count on Informed Sources to continue the discussion on important local issues.
It's where our top journalists discuss stories they've covered.
Stay informed with Informed Sources.
Hello, I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, it is understood that sometimes in politics there will be fights, even among members of the same party. And that was the case this week in Washington as a Republican president endorsed a Republican member of Congress to defeat a Republican incumbent senator. We'll look at some of the maneuvers in what will be a volatile year at the congressional level. Meanwhile, the sale of a high-rise office building and the conversion of a shutdown naval facility provide hope of revival for two business area neighborhoods. And there are high hopes, too, at City Park, where an ambitious master plan reaches the implementation stage. These stories, plus a look at the historic and cultural significance of the Dookie Chase restaurant, are on the agenda for tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, Greg LaRose, editor-in-chief, Louisiana Illuminator, and Tony McCauley, staff writer at the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate. All right, let's go on over to you, Greg, because now seems to be a new dynamic in the race for U.S. Senate.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of a surprise this was that Representative Julia Letlow is now putting her hat in the ring for the U.S. Senate race. She was never a hard no. She, because of redistricting, relocated to Baton Rouge, and that really started fueling talk that she was at some point going to put her name into the race. But the real wonder was, when would we see President Trump line up in support? Senator Cassidy certainly has done his best to ingratiate himself with the president, which he had to do after voting to impeach him back in 2021. So I don't know necessarily, though, that anyone in his camp was really surprised, because no one holds a grudge better than Donald Trump. So that he lines up behind Letlow tends to change the complexion of the race so much. I think everyone now points to a Cassidy-Letlow Republican runoff in June. The other candidates in the field have some decisions to make because now the fundraising aspect of it all. Cassidy's got a huge lead. The other ones are pretty distant behind him.
And the other announced candidates so far for the Republicans, among the Republicans are?
You have State Senator Blake Miguez, really champions himself as a Second Amendment fighter. He's at odds with Governor Landry over tax issues over the past year or so, so that kind of works against him. State Representative Julie Emerson of Karen Crow has been kind of a water bearer for the governor, and she's attracted about $500,000 in fundraising in recent weeks. Eric Scrometta, the Public Service Commissioner from Metairie, lagging behind. I think interesting and probably also feeling jilted too is State Treasurer John Fleming, who was part of Trump administration 1.0. And you have a council person from St. Tammany who's, barely into the mix there, who's announced as well. So, yeah, they now have some, I think, hard decisions to make between now and qualifying in mid-February.
The tradition of a public service commissioner running for Senate that goes back to Huey Long, and he had such luck that for years every public service commissioner would run for something. But tell the people here, because a lot of people, because Letlow's district is Northeast Louisiana, are familiar with the story, and it's sort of an interesting, kind of sad story.
It is, yeah. She rose to the levels of Congress because her husband, Luke, had passed away from complications related to COVID just days before he was going to be sworn in the 5th District. At that time, the district had largely northwest Louisiana makeup for the most part. So she runs for his seat. She's won re-election twice. Her background is as a university administrator with UL Monroe. And she, I think, is really, if you look at her voting record, not terribly all locked into the Trump agenda, and I see terribly in the sense that, you know, she's not 100% all Trump. And I think that's what I'm going to be looking for from Cassidy and the other Republican contenders. To some extent, they're all going to be trying to out-Trump one another between now.
Trump is definitely, he's supporting her. He's endorsed her. Are we expecting our governor to do the same?
That's a hard question to answer. And, you know, when the governor was asked about it earlier in the week outside the 5th District Court when he was there for the 10 Commandments hearing, he basically agreed with what Attorney General Liz Murrill had said in response to that question. And what Murrill said was, she's a great friend. I think she'll make a great U.S. Senator. In my book, that's not quite an endorsement. It's just saying she'd make a great senator. So we'll see.
Another friendship at play here with Landry and Trump.
Indeed, yeah. I think, you know, if the pressure were really on from Trump, I think Landry would maybe come out. But I don't see why he would or why he has to, at least until after the primary in May.
Okay.
At that point, it's Cassidy or Letlow.
Okay, so it shakes up the race a bit, qualifying in February, and the primaries are in what, May?
In May with a runoff if needed in June, and then, of course, all parties together in November.
In November. All righty. Thanks a lot, Greg. Okay, Tony, let's go on over to you because some big news in terms of real estate deals and renovations.
Yeah, two big developments in the last week. One was the formal groundbreaking at the former naval station in the Bywater. It was a naval station for about 100 years, and then they left in around about 2008, 2009. And the city eventually did a deal with the developer Joe Yeager about just over 10 years ago. And the idea was he was going to do a private sector development to turn those into, riverside apartments. And that just never happened. It just dragged on for a very long time. And that whole area became extremely derelict and graffiti-ridden and became a place where, criminals had little chop shops in there for stolen bikes. So this week, after it was taken over by Brian Gibbs, they put together a $300 million package to turn those into affordable, in other words, subsidized apartments, which will accommodate about 800 people, 294 units. And at the same time, they've got a economic development project right next to it called New Lab, which will be for innovative companies and projects like the LSU fuel, new fuel type economic development. So it's it's a real turnabout for that, and what the people that were there, including the mayor Moreno, said is it took a very complex set of funding arrangements that involved state, federal, and local to put it together.
This is a massive undertaking. I mean, it's a really big space. It's 20 acres, a number of buildings on it. So it's a lot that's involved with redoing this place.
Yeah, it's about 500,000 square feet on 20 acres, and there's the GNO Inc. is involved, and the state economic development agency is involved in this New Lab project. There are more agencies involved, and you would care for me to list, involved in the financing of the affordable. And then there's the Army Corps of Engineers owns land. Audubon Institute is going to manage land. The project is enormous, and it has evolved into this big transformation of this part of the city. But one of the interesting things was that the mayor and Susan Bourgeois, the LED secretary, said this is the blueprint for economic developments in the city and the state actually going forward, that they have to have all the public-private partnerships of this level of complexity.
So this is really looking into almost creating a community into itself.
Yeah,
live,
little
work,
mini
and
city.
play.
Yeah, there's going to be the 300, almost 300 apartments, community of 800 people or so, shops, 37,000 square feet of shops on the bottom, this economic development unit here, and then the third building, because the two buildings are going to be the first phase of apartments. The third building then is set aside for companies that graduate from this economic development unit, and hopefully would take office space in this.
And then green space, public access, which we really haven't had. It's been walled off. It's been a military unit
access
for
to
so
that
long.
part of the river will be exciting.
Very, very underdeveloped land right there on the canal, where the canal meets the river. That's the Army Corps of Engineers space, and they're behind this redevelopment into public space, which will connect with Crescent Park and open that right up.
Great.
And it looks like it's in Gibbs's wheelhouse, a combination of residential, commercial, at a pretty decent scale.
Well, what's interesting is he was, as he describes himself, a market guy. He was never in affordable housing and this type of complex projects. Now he's done this one. He's also in the Plaza Tower with the same company that's going to run the apartments part of this project, Lincoln Avenue Communities they're called, which are becoming a big player in the affordable housing market here. So, yeah, he's pivoted into this type of project, and that's kind of seems to be the way these things will go in the future.
Exciting projects and really important for the city. Now, one other thing I wanted you to touch on, the sale of the building at 400 Porges.
Yeah, that's this family from North Louisiana, from Monroe, called the Hakeem family, brothers. They made a fortune in infant products, and then they went into property. They've recently come into New Orleans and quite quickly become very major office space owners. They own 3 of the prime buildings downtown, which is about 1.5 million square feet. It's roughly 30% of the office space they now own. They bought this one. The 2 previous ones they bought, which were distressed ones, which was the old DXC Technology building, which had lost a lot of its major tenant there. They were down to about half occupancy. Prior to that, they'd bought what was called the Amico building. And this one was a different kettle of fish, though. It was actually pretty well occupied, but it was up for sale at a pretty low price because the Hertz Investment Group, which had been the biggest owner of office space downtown, had been in trouble for years and had been offloading properties. So
quickly, how are offices occupied downtown? What's the occupancy rate like?
There's no great story there. I mean, they've been slowly decreasing, and the occupancy has been held up by the fact that a lot of office space has been converted to hotels and residences. The next big question is the Hancock Whitney, which is the tallest office tower, also owned by Hertz. And when the Shell Oil Company moves out of there to River District offices next year, there's a big question about what happens to that building. Will it get converted, partially converted? There's no big new influx of demand for offices downtown.
All right, Tony, thanks a lot. Don, over to you, because City Park has got a new master plan.
They have a new master plan, and the math gets a little funny in your head when you think this is the master plan for 2050, and we're actually less than 25 years away from that. The last master plan for the park was approved in 2005. It was City Park 2018. That's gone full cycle. This one kicked off in 2023 with all sorts of interested parties. It received the unanimous approval of the City Park Conservancy and the City Park Improvement Association. And they have gone from approval phase now to implementation phase. We'll see in the next 5 years a lot of things they're very visual. You'll see improvements to both Tad Gormley and Pan Am stadiums. Already happened in some cases with new turf fields in both of those facilities. At Pan Am, they're improving the locker rooms and the restrooms in those facilities. They're working more on what the official planning is for Tad Gormley Stadium. They're also resurfacing the practice track. They've resurfaced the practice track. They've resurfaced tennis courts. A lot of the other work as part of the master plan is really connectivity. City Park is divided by an interstate. It's divided by a train. It's hard to get through from one part to the other if you're on foot or on bike. A lot of that's going to change. They're going to close up some roadways, make it more pedestrian friendly. They're also working to really improve the entrance points. There are about 8 different points of access to City Park if you look at it as a rectangle. Much more grand feeling. You're entering City Park. You're entering this wonderful New Orleans resource. So that will be changed in terms of signage and directions and sidewalks and pathways. The water areas will be improved to restore recreational activities to some of the lagoons. The old abandoned golf course on the north side will be returned to nature with trails through it and that sort of thing. So lots of really kind of ambitious ideas there. There's also a future very large treehouse structure, which is actually not a treehouse. Well, it's a building that resembles a treehouse with glass structures that looks out over the whole park. So super exciting. They don't obviously have money to pay for all of the dreamy ideas that would take us from now until 2050. They're getting ready to embark on a very large capital campaign and look to private and public money to make the dreams a reality, but improved walkways, improved signage, improved access for people in wheelchairs and other ADA compliant type things.
Yeah, it's such a treasure for our city, and it is big, as you said, north, and I mean, are the stables that's part of City Park as well, the City Park stables?
Yes.
So that's really a large swath of land.
It's a very large swath of land, and the biggest thing we all may notice in the next year, 2 years, is the ability to navigate and go, okay, if I'm going into the park here and I want to get to, there will be better signage. Right now, there just isn't. You know, you could, if you run around in a circle and don't end up at the same spot you stopped at, you might not know where to go.
Right.
So the improved access plans and signage and all of that.
That's all really exciting news because the park is so beautiful, and certainly post-Katrina, so much has happened there at City Park.
And it's brought out, it's the volunteer spirit that City Park was able to gather after Katrina. It hasn't gone away.
Because it is so well used and beloved. Okay,
yes.
Thanks a lot, Don. Greg, over to you. We had mentioned Governor Landry. Well, he's sort of midway. How's his first 2 years been?
So I'll preface this breakdown by saying at this point, I think he's a shoo-in for re-election, barring some unforeseen calamity. He, has amassed, I think, a pretty good record with regards to getting legislation that he wants through the legislature, and some really dramatic changes with regards to how the state is run, with regards to having a lot of his hand-picked people in places that traditionally were selected by outside influences. And you'd look at a lot of changes to ethics laws that he's put essentially a lot of his hand-picked people on the ethics board. He's placed them in charge of university systems and individual universities. But he's not exactly, scored wins at every point along the way. If I look back and would single out some issues that he's had, I'd look at, his move to try and make the income tax go away at the state level. Voters have been resoundingly against that. He had 4 amendments last spring that voters rejected. It included his fiscal overhaul of the state's financing and some pretty stringent criminal justice measures that would have placed more 17-year-olds as adults into the correctional system. So he's not, scored wins at every step of the way. But again, you look at the state's electorate. It's really, really conservative. That's where the governor aligns, on paper at least, in terms of economic development and jobs. He can campaign off of that. I tend to take the 10-year look insofar as let's look 10 years down the road when we get there to see if these grand ideas and projects that were promised actually developed and were actually beneficial.
Constitutional Convention was something that he had pushed for too. That did not happen.
Didn't go well. I'll anticipate that if not from the governor's office, there's likely going to be a push for another to, again, re-look at the way Louisiana generates revenue. I just don't know that there's like an overwhelming appetite for that in the legislature yet.
And then what about the Gator program? That's tuition for private schools.
And that's another one where I think he has to take the L with regards to the legislature. The governor wants to expand that to the tune of like $50 million so that families can move children from public schools to private. But what the application shows that an overwhelming of existing private school families are asking for that money. State Senator Cameron Henry has really led the fight against that and shot down the governor's ask for more money. Just Friday, the governor's given a preview of what his budget will look like for 2026-27. He's going to make another big ask. Senator Henry's still not seeing what he likes in regards to, we need to know more about this program before they add more money to it.
Because the session starts soon.
March 8th, right around the corner.
That's coming up soon. Okay, the other big thing on the governor's plate, he's a special envoy to Greenland. We've heard a lot about that lately.
And we're trying to figure out exactly what that entails. You know, it's sort of a changing story through the NATO summit at Davos and what the president has said he will or won't do. And
he was uninvited from the dog race, right?
That's right.
So we hear. I don't know if that invitation was ever formal, but according to the governor, everyone in Greenland's welcome down here for Mardi Gras. So the more the merrier.
But this week had to be very confusing to him because the story kind of changed. I mean, what Trump was talking about going into the week is different than what he's talking about today.
And the governor's been very careful, I think, not to say, okay, here's what the job involves, here's what I'll do. He's largely painted it as sort of like this economic development mission plus, in that, you know, he's talking about striking business deals. Exactly what that entails, we don't know.
That's a political skill of his, though, is to leave it a little bit vague. Right?
He is. I think he's really exceptionally adept at navigating the fine lines, like the endorsement for let low or the non-endorsement for let low. You can't really paint him into a corner. He's I think, skilled when it comes to that.
And the whole immigration situation, too, and ICE and Border Patrol. What's been his... He just spoke to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, he's been certainly ardently in support of what the president's doing with the enhanced enforcement measures, but I think he stops well short of being overly negative with regards to the immigrant population itself.
All right, well, it's been an interesting 2 years. Let's see where the next one go, and especially what's going to be involved with Greenland. We're all waiting on that one. All righty, thanks a lot, Greg. Over to you. There was just really a tragic, unfortunate incident that occurred involving the Dookie Chase restaurant.
Yeah, because of the tragedy, it just brings to mind Dookie Chase as a topic, which something needs to be talked about. About the tragedy, though, I think the police and the mayor they did the right thing by separating the incident from Dookie Chase. They made the point known right away. This had nothing to do with the restaurant per se. It was nothing internal. Now, I think that was important for people to know. But it did bring to mind Dookie Chase. My idea, if somebody did a book about New Orleans, kind of like a big pictorial book, the cover should be Dookie Chase, the restaurant. If that's a place that typifies New Orleans, the food, the culture, the Creole, the Creole heritage, I mean, it is really the ultimate New Orleans place. What comes to mind, in the 1960s, Ray Charles recorded a song called Early in the Morning. It was an adaptation of a song originally done by this guy, Louis Jordan. So Ray Charles kind of moved the words around a little bit. But it's about a guy who wakes up or he can't sleep. It's early in the morning. He can't find his girlfriend. He's hungry, doesn't know what to do. So he wrote the song about going out and trying to find something to eat. And the line says, early in the morning, I went to Dookie Chase to get something to eat. The waitress looked at me and said, Ray, you sure look beat. Now it's early in the morning. I ain't got nothing but the blues. And I guess he got the blues because he couldn't find anything to eat. Supposedly, this was based on something he ultimately sold for red beans with fried chicken. Don't know if you always want that early in the morning, but if it's from Dookie Chase, it's probably
you could do a lot worse than that.
Yeah. But it had such a colorful reputation. Of course, Leah Chase, during the years that, and she was during the years that she ran, it really became the image of the place. It was just really inspirational, and just a nice woman and a fun woman and a great cook. I mean, their fried chicken really was something good. But one thing I was thinking about is a tradition I think that typifies the New Orleans link to this place is there's this tradition there on the Thursday before Easter, known as Holy Thursday, of serving gumbo zab, which is supposed to be this vegetable gumbo. And people go in throngs to have the gumbo zab. And I mean, there's different seatings that so many people go. And they do something like 800 gallons of it during that day. And they claim they have 8 different vegetables in it. And I was actually looking up, if I could find it, what the ingredients are in the gumbo zap. Mustard greens, collard greens, turnip greens, beet tops, cabbage, romaine, watercress, spinach, and carrot tops, plus cloves and onions. Okay.
And it's yummy and it's nutritious for you.
Yeah, that sounds pretty healthy, actually.
Now, one thing that confuses me is my understanding is that gumbo zap is supposed to be meatless because it's Holy Thursday, but hers has ham and sausage in it.
That's meat.
Oh, okay.
I'm not mad at
Well, that's
that.
Holy Thursday.
Well,
Good
I was
Friday,
thinking
definitely
now that we have a Creole Pope, he can fix that. I mean, he can just give it a Creole look. It's okay to have meat if it's from Dookie Chase.
Still okay to go have your gumbo zerb over there. Holy Thursday at Dookie Chase, a wonderful place. Of course, the community really responded to its reopening after the tragic incident that happened last week, the shooting that happened, and had nothing to do with the restaurant, but unfortunately it did occur there. So a wonderful spot, definitely a wonderful spot, Dookie Chase, and then of course here in WYES, you can catch the cooking show of Leah's Legacy, Leah's family, and all that they're doing, and in production right now is another cooking series with Dookie Chase.
Dookie Chase, that'd be her grandson. He's making a name for himself too, nationwide too.
All righty, all right, guys, let's go around the table. Hey.
Okay, there's a folk music convention coming to town, the 21st and through the 26th. They're expecting 2,500 musicians and people in the music industry, and they're going to be honoring Clifton Chenier, the memory of him. They've been here before, and New Orleans is so popular as a destination, they've already agreed to come back in 2030 and 2032.
Well, great. Dawn.
It's a PSA. I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing it at this point, but with freezing weather coming this weekend and possibly next weekend, really pay attention to your pipes and the hoses attached to your homes and all of that, because the damage you can deal with is very expensive.
It is, and also take care of your pets, too.
Yes.
We mentioned Governor Landry's budget preview. It's going to include a big ask for corrections, specifically for money to put into Angola State Penitentiary. We'll detail that coming up.
Okay, very good. We're looking forward. Tony, real quick.
Just plug a story of mine that's in the Sunday, our Sunday business section about Fidelity Bank. It's kind of a story about the state of Louisiana banking. Recent activity. Does it mean it's got a future, or is it really just putting itself up for sale? There's about 300 employees involved there.
All righty. All right, guys, thanks a lot for being here, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening, and stay warm this weekend.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
We count on Informed Sources to continue the discussion on important local issues.
It's where our top journalists discuss stories they've covered.
Stay informed with Informed Sources.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.